Hi there, it's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on a Monday. I'm Jerry Usher along with Debbie Georgiani, the show team in place. Rich, actually Jeff is out today, our social media manager. We got somebody else handling that. Ryan Penny is on the phones. And Debbie, lo and behold, I just got back from Mass, and we were right. It is the Feast of Padre Pio today.
Did they talk about it at Mass?
Oh, of course, yes.
Did Father talk about it, or did they just announce it?
No,
he did?
Father. Oh, no, he preached a little bit. Yeah, he included Padre Pio in the homily. Yeah, of course. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful celebration today.
Wow. Yes, it is, folks. Yes, it is. And we have decided to dedicate the entire broadcast to this great saint, Saint Padre Pio. And we're asking you, please, if you like what you're listening to, you want to, maybe you know so much about this great saint, or maybe you're just intrigued and you don't really know that much. You've heard about him. You say, what is all this fuss about Padre Pio? Well, listen to this broadcast, and then would you please share it? Tell folks it's on YouTube and Facebook, and share it because it's so important. He is a great saint, and he received so many spiritual gifts from God for our benefit. Okay, he's a contemporary saint. It's for our benefit. He died in 1968. Okay, and Pope at the canonization, Pope John Paul believed so much in this saint. As a matter of fact, when Karol Wojtyła, before he was Pope John Paul II, he met with Padre Pio, and Padre Pio told him, he prophesied, he said he saw ahead. He says, you're going to be great. You're going to be a pope someday. This was to Karol Wojtyła before he became Pope John Paul. And wouldn't you know it, he became one of our greatest popes. And how wonderful is that? This is all with the great gifts that God bestowed on Padre Pio for our benefits. See, people forget that, Jerry. Everybody focuses on the gifts that Padre Pio had. It was to bring souls closer to Christ.
Yeah, of course, it's for his benefit, but it always goes beyond that. And that's what we celebrate today. And every time we celebrate a saint, we celebrate the action of God in his or her life, and by extension, the great example and witness that they gave for us to help lead us on toward eternal life, good Lord willing. So we want to hear from you today. If you have a Padre Pio devotion, a devotion to Saint Pio of, how do you say it, Debbie? Pietrelcina. Pietrelcina. Mm-hmm. If you have a devotion to, we'll just call him Padre Pio. That's how most people know him. Or if you have a story, maybe he's been a special patron of yours in some way. Maybe you had a chance to see him and meet him. Maybe somebody you know did. Because as Debbie, you said, he was a contemporary of many people still living today. So here's the number, 833-288-EWTN, 833-288-3986.
Well, I met him, Jerry. I went to San Giovanni Rotondo, where he lays incorrupt at the beautiful basilica there in San Giovanni Rotondo in southern Italy, in the Puglia region, and absolutely just amazing. I believe that the name of the basilica is St. Maria, I believe, and it's just, the whole town is dedicated to Padre Pio. Let me just kind of, in case you're not sure who we're talking about, this is just a great saint. The feast day is today. I believe he was born May 25th, and his name was Francesco Forgione, and he became Father Pio in the Capuchin Franciscan friars. Okay, so it's in the line of St. Francis of Assisi. Now we know that St. Francis of Assisi received the stigmata. Well, so did Padre Pio, I believe, in 1918. Okay, so Padre Pio received that, and I believe, Jerry, it's said that he's the only priest that received the stigmata. Okay, but he had other spiritual gifts as well given to him for our purpose, folks, not to highlight him. Remember, he was a man of actually very not much education. He was quite sickly. Okay, very humble. He really wanted to devote his life to prayer. Okay, but God used him as an instrument to help all of us. Okay, so he had many gifts. These are just some of the gifts, the special spiritual gifts that Padre Pio had throughout his lifetime. He lived to be, I believe, 81. And by the way, by the time he died, Jerry, the stigmata was gone. He had the stigmata for like 50 some odd years. Stigmata was gone when he died. He had the gift of conversion, discernment of spirits, reading souls, visions, bilocation, healing, prophecy. It goes on and on. The stigmata, so many things that Padre Pio could do. I just found out yesterday, Jerry, there's another book being written about him, and I just found out he had the ability to erase himself from photographs because he didn't like his picture being taken. And if people snuck a picture of him or snuck back a picture of the stigmata, he could erase it when they got it developed. Isn't that pretty amazing?
Well, everything about him is amazing, but again, folks, these are all things that God bestowed upon this great man, and the key for us to take away, I'm just going to mention it now, way before the end of the show, is that God has great things for each one of us. He has great gifts for us to use, to put to the service of others and the church, and also for our own edification. So let's remember that as we have this conversation about Padre Pio, who, by the way, one of my connections, Debbie, I've prayed to him, his intercession many times, and I have made myself a spiritual son of his, because he said, what did he say? He would not
enter heaven until all his spiritual sons and daughters made it.
Right. And so, at my parish, Sacred Heart in Palm Desert, California, we have an adoration chapel, and it's named the Padre Pio, St. Padre Pio Adoration Chapel. So there's a deep, deep connection there. Every time I spend time in adoration there, of course, I just feel his presence with us. So,
do you have any other connections?
Nothing direct. Like I didn't get to go to his grave or anything like you did. But just all of my life. I mean, he's just sort of always been there. Nothing like what I want to say, out of the ordinary. Just a very simple devotion that I've had to him, and like I say, the adoration chapel at our parish. But I'll bet there are a lot of people listening right now who have their own Padre Pio stories.
Yeah, and that's what we want to hear. So please call in and make sure that make this just a jam-packed show of celebrating the feast day of St. Padre Pio, and then share it, folks. Don't just listen and take it in. Share it with others. Say, please learn about this great saint. He had so many gifts. He would spend 12 to 14 hours in the confessional every day. He had the ability to read hearts, to read souls. So if you would go in and you'd hold back something that you felt nervous about or ashamed about, he would call you on it, because he would, and sometimes he would actually take on other people's sins. He was so closely aligned with the passion of Christ because of the stigmata, and believe me, the stigmata was very painful for him, but he endured it, and he endured it because he loves other souls. Think about that, folks. Number to call is 833-288-3986. We're celebrating the feast day of St. Padre Pio on your show, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Call to communion.
Through EWTN Radio, we talk to audiences all over the world. One thing I've found out is everybody in the whole world has the same set of questions. They live the same human life. They all want meaning, they all want love, they all want significance, they want forgiveness. That's the most fascinating thing to me. The same answers work wherever you are throughout the world, because we're all children of God.
Called to Communion with Dr. David Anders, this afternoon, 2 Eastern on EWTN Radio. Want the latest pro-life news? Want it delivered? Sign up. It's free. EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your source for everything happening now in the fight to protect the sanctity of human life. New episodes delivered every week to your inbox. So if you really want to know,
sign up today.
Go to EWTN.com/pro-life today.
Third Millennium Media presents Debbie Georgianni.
The world tells us not to be merciful, and we as Catholic Christians are called to take a step back and look at it in a different way. We must practice mercy, especially if we want to receive mercy.
Debbie Georgianni, co-host of Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio, wants to visit your parish retreat or conference. Invite Debbie Georgianni today online at thirdmillenniummedia.com.
Just getting started here on a Monday. It's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Thanks to Rich Jesse on the controls today, our producer. Ryan Penny is on the phones. Jeff Burson, our social media manager, is enjoying a visit with his son, who is in the Navy in the Seattle area. So pray for Jeff's safety and a beautiful trip and visit for them. And I just wanted to mention, we were talking today about St. Padre Pio. And of course, being a priest, he knew the Mass very, very well and had mystical experiences while he celebrated Mass many, many times. And I bring that up simply because the Mass is truly a great mystical experience for all of us when we enter into it with all of our heart and ask the Holy Spirit to draw us deeply into it. And if you're unable to make it to Mass any day of the week, especially weekdays, weekends, most of us try and go. Many people still can't go on weekends, but EWTN has the Mass provided for you at 8 a.m. Eastern Time on many of these same radio affiliates. Holy Mass, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. Eastern Time.
I so wish Jeff Burson was with us today because he absolutely loves Padre Pio. And, at the start of the show, we pray to what we call the Powerhouse Five, and Padre Pio is one of the folks we ask to just help us with the show and to bless all of our listeners and just to make it just unfold with the Spirit leading. And it's been this way for over 4.5 years, and we're just so grateful. So Padre Pio, I can tell you this, folks, I truly can feel, and I'm going to get emotional, I truly can feel his presence on this show today, and I just believe he's beaming. By the way, I'm going fast because there's so much we want to get in there. He was a joyful person, okay? He had a funny sense of humor, but he was also a tough Italian. He could be really tough, okay? But so it was wonderful. He had all these characteristics of make him, fully just alive, and it was fun to be around him. They enjoyed it, although a lot of the neighboring brother priests, if you will, were quite jealous of the gifts that he was given, and they petitioned the Vatican. And when he got the stigmata, they said, you know what, take him out of ministry, take him out. And the Vatican took him out of ministry for many years. They made this poor man go ahead and just have Mass with only at max one other person in this side chapel, and he did that for many years. And people said, Padre, why would you go along with this? And he said, I'm obedient. I'm going to do what I have to do. And he knew he was being gifted by God, and he couldn't come out there and minister in an effective way because they told him he couldn't. He was obedient, and then they lifted that whatever you want to call it. What do you call it, Jerry? A sanction or something? What do you call it?
Yeah. Sanction, prohibition, something
prohibition.
Like that. Yeah.
And then he was able to minister. And then Jerry, tens of thousands of people came to see the stigmata. He took the gloves off when he celebrated Mass, and his hands would bleed, and people would come from miles around, and their hearts and souls were changed. That was the reason the good Lord used Padre Pio in such a special way.
Yeah, and you alluding to the fact of his obedience, that is really what made him holy. More than anything else, the gifts, the stigmata, the mystical experiences, the reading hearts, the discernment of spirits, all of that. Dear friends, let's keep that in mind. Those are gifts that God gives. Those are not given, they have to, if they're used properly, they can help us attain holiness. But really doing the will of Jesus, doing God's will, being obedient, especially to superiors, that is truly where humility and holiness are going to come from. And Debbie, you mentioned, if I can just maybe tweak something you said a little bit.
I'm sorry.
You said something about, you said something about, his ministry was not, he was kind of hidden away. I would say his ministry might have been even more effective during those hidden years because like you said, the graces were preparing all those tens of thousands of people. So it was really then maybe that he did his most powerful ministry. Think about it.
You know what? You're right. Because during that time, boy, are you smart, Jerry. I don't know if you knew this. During that time when he was told he couldn't really minister publicly, he said 20 or more rosaries a day, Jerry. A day. So you're right. In preparation. Boy, were you smart about that. You're right. That's exactly what he used that time wisely. Very good. Okay, we're going to hear from you folks. Let's keep this going the entire brief hour we get to spend with one another. Let's hear from Grace in Charlotte, North Carolina on Carolina Catholic Radio. You're a first-time caller. You get the virtual bell. Happy feast day of St. Padre Pio, Grace.
Well, thank you, and I'm so glad that you're doing this program today. I just want everybody that doesn't know Padre Pio or just knows him a little bit to, by listening to your show, have a desire to get to know him better because he's just one really rocking, incredible saint. And I thank you for talking to the audience about him today.
Grace, how did you...
I just wanted to share...
Go ahead. Go ahead, please. You're going to share probably what I was going to ask you, so go right ahead.
Yeah, I guess listening early on about the fact that he could read souls in confession and that he had the stigmata and all these other things I kept finding out about him. I kept digging and eventually some of my friends started to know that I was interested in him. So I have a couple letters from soldiers from World War II talking about how he appeared in the sky to bombers so that they wouldn't drop bombs on the city of Petrocina, and how he bilocated in the hospital. And in fact, I know some other people that have talked about somebody came into a family member's room and said some prayers, and the person got better the next day or felt better the next day, and they described the priest who had come in the room the night before, and it was a description of Padre Pio that the person didn't even know who he was, and it turned out that there wasn't any priest around that looked like that or anything. And
that's right.
So he just got an incredible array of spiritual gifts. I just wanted to talk real quick about the concept of being a spiritual child. I had some conflict too. I was in Medjugorje and took a picture of the clouds in the sky, and his face is in the sky. And then I showed it to somebody because I didn't know what it meant, and they said, you're a spiritual child. That means you're a spiritual child of Padre Pio. So when I did talk further with them, he apparently made a comment that he will not enter heaven until all of his spiritual children have died and gone to heaven. So that means even if I'm in purgatory a long time, I guess he's going to be waiting for me to pass from purgatory into heaven. But I thought that was just such a beautiful, incredible opportunity to be aligned with a saint, I guess.
Right.
Especially like Padre Pio.
Right. And what a testament, for him to say that. That's how much he cares about other souls. You would think one of the things I heard that he always said is, he can't wait for the time that he dies. Not that he had a death wish or anything, but he couldn't wait for the time that he dies. So here he wanted to get to heaven, but yet he wants all these other souls to get to heaven as well. Grace, you probably know this, okay? You probably know this, so please forgive me, but I just want to draw attention to this because there are certain connections, signs, and symbols that seem to happen around Padre Pio. And I don't know if you knew this, but did you know that in San Giovanni Rotondo at the Capuchin Friary, the name of it is Lady of Grace. It's the title given to Our Lady. Yeah. So you share another connection.
It's interesting because when I look back, I know that the very first experience I had with the Blessed Virgin Mary was with a statue of Our Lady of Grace. I remember looking at her and thinking, I wonder why her hands are down like that in that position, and
Right.
So later on, I found out it was Our Lady of Grace, and now that you understand the implications of, the graces that are flowing out of her hands and everything, it's just a beautiful image of Our Lady.
Yeah, and you carry that name, Grace. Yeah.
Devotion to Our Lady,
And you carry that name, Grace. It's a special name. Yes, thank you.
And one thing to be sure that we have to mention right now, and that is, I don't know of a saint. I don't think it's possible that anybody became a canonized saint without a great relationship with Our Lady too, without really entrusting themselves to her, committing, consecrating themselves to Mary, to Jesus through Mary, and just really, relying on her. And Saint Padre Pio was, of course, very, very devoted to our Blessed Mother as well. So, thank you, Grace, for getting us started on the phone calls. Being a first-time caller from Charlotte, we appreciate that. Therese.
Can I share one quick thing? She talked. Grace talked about Padre Pio being in the World War I and World War II. World War I, he served in the I guess what is it? Not the hospital corps. He served in World War I, but then because of his bronchitis, and his failing health, he in World War II. She's referring to how he helped the pilots and helped the soldiers. Very true. And Jerry, do you know that some pilots and soldiers? See, this is gonna make me cry. When they were saved by Padre Pio, they went back to visit Padre Pio because their mother of the soldiers told them, "I was praying to Saint Pio. I was praying to Padre Pio for you." The soldiers never knew him. They never even knew who he was. The mothers of the soldiers were praying to Father Pio, okay? And they went back to meet Padre Pio, and Padre Pio would even say to them, "Oh yeah, and I saved you many other times too, like and when your parachute wouldn't work and this and that." So you see the mother's prayers of mother's prayers are very powerful. Got to add that as well.
Okay, Teresa in Dalton, Pennsylvania has us on JMJ Catholic Radio. Listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, and you're up next. Hi, Teresa.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, Debbie. I'm so excited that you're having this program for our favorite saint, St. Padre Pio.
Great.
Thank you, Teresa.
What would you like to share?
St. Padre Pio is our family's patron saint. In 1961, my dad was single, and at the time, my mom, who was in the Dominican convent in Ohio, and she was only 18 years old. And so my dad he was Italian, but he could only speak Italian and not write. So he had his friend write a letter to St. Padre Pio asking him, please pray for him to find a wife, because he felt like that was his vocation to marriage. And so my dad did get a letter back from the secretary saying that he should be assured of Padre Pio's prayers for him. Well, at the end of 1961, my mom, she got asked to leave the convent because it was not her vocation. And they met in church, and they had 7 children. And one of the 7 children is me, and I have 12 children. And I have just a little bit of, I have so many Padre Pio miracles. I pray to him twice a day. I'll just share with you my prayer. It's just a made-up prayer that I made up about 19 years ago. And I say every day when I wake up and every night before I go to bed, I say, Dear Padre Pio, please send me your guardian angel to watch over my family and I and guard us and keep us free from spiritual, physical, and moral dangers. And then I say the guardian angel prayer on the Hail Mary. And when I was pregnant with my 4th baby, I had a lot of complications. In fact, that baby turned out to be 11 pounds, 9 ounces, and it was a regular delivery. And the day before I delivered, my dad gave me a book that I'd never seen before, and the title of the book was Padre Pio, Send Me Your Guardian Angel. And he had just picked it up from the shrine that we have dedicated to Padre Pio in Bartow, PA. And anyway, I was in serious condition. I was getting very, very sick and very, very weak, and danger of losing the baby. And just this thought came to me because it was fresh in my mind, and I said, Padre Pio, send me your guardian angel. And that baby was delivered miraculously. Honestly, I don't know. I'm a 5'2", like 130-pound woman, and this baby was delivered, and he was perfectly healthy and normal, and we named him Francis after Padre Pio. So that's just one little miracle story. I have miracle stories every day. Padre Pio has helped me to raise these 12 children, which they're not all raised, every day. I can't tell you how powerful he is against the devil and all of the temptations. For people who do not know Padre Pio, pray to him, and he will help you.
Yeah. And that's one thing we really need to avail ourselves of today is the help of the saints in heaven. They have run the race. They have won the crown of victory, and God will listen to their prayers. God will respond when they intercede for us. And so, Teresa, what a beautiful story. And I can hear in your voice that you probably do, like you said, have many, many other beautiful stories that you could share. And I'm just thinking of your mom and dad. Your dad writes to Padre Pio, gets that letter back saying, I'm praying for you. Your mom is in the convent, and I as someone who entered formation for the priesthood, and I figured, okay, this is my vocation for life, and I didn't really have a good concept of, well, this is a long discernment period. I just kind of threw myself into it and figured that was absolutely it for me. I don't know how your mom felt about that. They probably had better, discernment and explained to them, hey, you're here for a period of time to see if this is your vocation or whatever. But still, where I'm leading up to here is maybe it had to be somewhat traumatic for her to be asked to leave the convent. And yet this is God's plan at work, putting the puzzle pieces together, and Padre Pio is up there just smiling and saying, okay, Lord, this is what I'm praying for. These two right down there, those are the ones that you want to come together. So it took some challenging circumstances, especially for your mom. But wow, Debbie, look at the fruit of this.
Absolutely. Teresa, you've got just a big, blooming, amazing, vibrant family, and you rely on the help of this great saint to help you, like you said, raise the family and continue to encourage the family and to help defend the family. You're absolutely correct. I mean, Padre Pio, the devil was definitely after him, and like Jerry said, he fought the good fight and he made it, and he's helping all of us. And so, Teresa, thank you. I think you're beautiful. Heartfelt prayer to Padre Pio on a daily basis is just, it's very telling of how close you are to him. Thank you so much, Teresa. God bless you and your beautiful family. Please ask Padre Pio to pray for all our listeners today. If you would do that, that would really be just a blessing for all of us. This is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We'll be right back with more of your takes on Padre Pio.
Teresa Tomeo.
It's our goal to help each and every listener take this beautiful faith of ours out into the public square with great ideas on making a difference through engaging the culture.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
You know what's kind of mind-blowing about intercessory prayer? God generally only grants the prayers that fit what He wanted to do anyway. So what's the point of us asking? Why does He tell us throughout Scripture to ask for things in prayer? I think He chose to wait on our prayers to give us His blessings. And I think He chose that because He wants to share the joy of being distributors of His grace with us. He wants us, by our requests, to unleash His healing, His blessing, and His miracles in the world. It wasn't enough for Him to just bless us. He wanted to share the joy He has when He blesses with us by making us necessary parts of that blessing. Archbishop Fulton Sheen said that the graces of God are hanging from heaven by silken threads, and prayer is the sword that cuts them down. So ask God boldly for things today and share the joy of raining His grace down on a needy world. That's what intercessory prayer is about. Prayer changes things. Send us a message at connect@reallifecatholic.com. This is Chris Stefanik on EWTN Radio.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I come from the other side of the tracks, see? My uncle used to have slot machines. Put one nickel in and it's emptied. And I brought him home in a bag, and my mother looked at me. Where did you get all that money? I said, I won them. You didn't win them. He fixed the machine. I didn't care if he fixed the machine or not, you know?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Hi, this is Dr. David Anders. Do you have questions about the Catholic faith? Get the answers on Call to Communion, coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern. Now, back to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Every day at this time, it is your show. Debbie and I, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We come up with topics that we hope and pray will be meaningful to you, and we put them out there and let you call in and just take them and run with them. And today we're asking you for your takes on Saint Padre Pio, whose feast day is today. The great Italian saint who had so many of the spiritual gifts from God, maybe best known for the stigmata, which, by the way, for those who don't know what that is, most of you do, I'm sure it's just the wounds of Christ manifest in another human being. And Padre Pio had, I think, on his hands only, Debbie, or did he have
I believe the side.
The side?
And I believe sometimes the crown of thorns he could feel as well. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody correct me on that, you Padre Pio fans out there. But yeah.
Well, you know what? And I just have to share this. I think I shared it last time we talked about Padre Pio, but someone asked him one time, and he probably got asked this a lot, but somebody asked him if the wounds, the stigmata hurt, the wounds of Christ in his hands. Padre Pio, do those hurt? And I guess he rolled his eyes and says, what do you think? So he was very human, you know. He had to endure the pain of the wounds of Christ. But when somebody asked him, he was very, very candid about it and said, you better believe these things hurt.
Yeah, he had a great sense of humor. People don't realize that because you see pictures of him. He didn't like his picture being taken. So you see pictures of him looking very kind of serious, but he had a great sense of humor. Okay, so I love the Take Two family. They're always quick to keep Jerry and I right in line. I just love it. So yes, Padre Pio on the 15th November 1915, he was drafted into World War I started then. December 6, he was assigned to the 10th Medical Corps in Naples, but due to poor health, he was continually discharged and recalled until March 16th, 1918. He was declared unfit for service and discharged completely, so he could go back to the friary. Also, too, we have other folks weighing in saying, Debbie, you forgot to mention, I know he had so many gifts, you guys. He had the gift of levitation. When he'd go into ecstasy in prayer, and he would kind of float up. He had extraordinary abstinence from both sleep and nourishment, Jerry. So he could exist. And he went to, think about this. He had poor health since he was a child, and he lived to be 81 years old. What does that tell you, folks? God has a purpose and plan for each and every one of us, and we're not going to get out of this thing called life until we finish and accomplish that purpose and plan. He also was very close to his guardian angel, and also saw, he had experiences of Mary and Jesus at a very young age. And we decided at age 5, to dedicate his life to Jesus.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Well, we want to hear more of what you have to say. So thanks for your patience. John in New York, listening on Sirius XM 130. Welcome to Take Two, John.
Thank you, Jerry and Debbie. Hello.
Hi, John.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. I'm stuck in Manhattan traffic, but I'm smiling from ear to ear.
Good.
Good deal.
Hopefully the topic has something to do with that.
I think it does. I recall the first caller was talking about Padre Pio in World War II. And I think what she was trying to say was the German bombers were supposed to bomb the church, and they kept saying that they saw this face in the sky, and the hand would move the airplane, telling them to go the other way, and they could not bomb the church. And I believe that's documented on at least 2 different pilots that have testified to seeing this face in the sky.
Right. I've read that too, John. I've heard that pilots actually would look over to other planes, and they'd see Padre Pio in like the back seat or something of that nature. If there was some kind of other, a 2-seated plane or something, or on the side seat or whatever. And there's people that saw Padre Pio's face in the sky. People said they would clearly remember they would be in danger during the war, and somebody would appear, and it was Padre Pio's face. I mean, he has a very distinct face with that long beard and everything, and he would just take care of it. So yeah, there was so many sightings of Padre Pio during World War II. And the interesting thing about it is, I wonder if, because he served in the First World War, if he just felt so strongly, I mean, obviously protecting all the spiritual sites and the holy grounds, but I wonder if he felt so strongly about war that he took an active role in it from this perspective, because he was actually fully discharged, so he couldn't actually serve in the Second World War. So what do you think about that, Jerry? It's kind of interesting. He thought he'd do it from, what you like to say, the 30,000-foot view.
38,000-foot view. What do you think of that, John? What Debbie just said?
I think it's definitely possible. I mean, when you hear of a saint, and he's a saint from our times. I mean, I'm only 56, so he died when I was 5. But the gifts he had were incredible. And I mean, I remember a child was dying of cancer. He had a tumor, and the mother went in one night to check on him, and the Padre Pio picture over his bed, all the white spots were glowing. So she thought she was crazy, and she shut all the blinds, and they were still glowing. And in the morning, I'm tearing up thinking of it. In the morning, the tumor was gone.
Wow. Now you got us all emotional here, John. Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, true. And it just even, I don't know if you're aware of the one with the drunk. There was a drunk who prayed to Padre Pio that they had an infant and they wanted to stop drinking, and they smelled this fragrance. Mm-hmm. And they went home and they smelled the fragrance in the child's room near the crib. And from that day on, they had such a disgust for the smell of alcohol, they never touched another drop.
Wow.
Yeah, and thank you, John, for sharing these stories. And many of our listeners have perhaps heard one or more of them, Debbie as well. I'm learning so much today. I told Debbie at the start of the show, you know way more about this than I do, so I'm kind of along for the ride today. But I'm just being so inspired because the scope of how God uses saints, like so many of them, not just Padre Pio, but the scope of how God uses them, Debbie. We talked about, his ability to read souls and people coming to confession, and he would remind them of sins there's more for you to confess. He was reading their hearts and so forth. So there's all of that, but then there's his intercession, his care for people's health, and for church buildings, and then obviously during war, and trying to protect people and places and so forth. So he was used in some, used in some amazing, mighty ways.
Jerry, he received over 5,000 letters a month. They have a bookshelf and in San Giovanni Rotondo stuffed, literally stuffed. You cannot stick your fingers and take out a letter, stuffed with letters from just 1 year. He read them all. He would ask his guardian angel and the guardian angels of others to help translate. Remember, he spoke Italian. He didn't speak English and other languages, okay? So the angels would translate. How amazing is that? And he'd send letters back. All this communication was done on the angelic level. Pretty incredible. John, I just wanted to say, I think it's so moving and beautiful, the love you have for Padre Pio. You do realize now that the people in Manhattan are going to look over at you driving in that car, seeing tears rolling down your cheeks going, he must be really sad about this traffic. You do realize that, right, John?
Yep, absolutely. But I'm smiling from ear to ear, so I guess they're confused.
Yeah, wow. Praise God. Thank you, John. Be safe there, and we'll ask Padre Pio, thank you, through the help of the Holy Spirit and his intercession, to part the traffic like the Red Sea for you there. It's probably a regular occurrence for you and so many of us. 833-288-3986, talking about Saint Pio of Pietrelcina. Padre Pio, his feast day is today. What do you know about him? What have you heard about him? Did you have a devotion? Maybe some kind of a personal connection with him. That's what we're asking you. And Maureen is next in Denver, listening to us on the Catholic Radio Network. Hi, Maureen. Welcome to Take Two.
Thank you very much. I'm going to leave this question up for you to answer. I had finished a Mass with Father Benedict and then went over to San Giovanni with my spiritual director in a group, and was privileged enough for the friar to put me downstairs, and my back was against Padre Pio's in casement. It was a grate type thing, so my back was against the grate. Padre was behind me. I loved him. Ever since I heard about him in World War II, I absolutely had to see him. I had to go and wound up there. Anyway, I did my Mass. My husband fell down with a very serious heart attack. The heart attack so bad that most of the doctors in New Jersey, including Deborah, wouldn't touch him. But the doctor that had him in the emergency room went to school with Dr. Mehmet Oz. I am not of means, believe me, not even a little bit of means. I didn't know who Dr. Mehmet Oz was. I didn't care. My husband was dying, and we went for a visit to him, and he said, be back in 2 days, and we did, to Columbia Presbyterian. Now, from San Giovanni, I strongly recommend Send Me Your Angel, that book, for anyone that doesn't know my darling Padre Pio. You've got to read that book. It capsulizes what he was. Anyway, I had that. I had, from San Giovanni, I had my fingers around the neck of the statue. And in San Giovanni, in the gift shop, when I bought the tiny statue, I was told you can't display a religious image until it has been canonized. So, in other words, don't go running around, I guess, the church with it on your head. I'm not really sure. But it wound up in the emergency room with a Dr. Mehmet Oz. Anyway, when I saw Dr. Mehmet Oz talk about, ignorance, I said to him, Father, Doctor, listen, let your hands do whatever they want to do. Jesus is doing the surgery. The Blessed Mother is going to have his head in her lap. The music you hear is going to be the Blessed Mother, and the angels are going to be all over the room. I had no idea that Dr. Mehmet Oz, God bless him and his hands, was a Muslim. I had no idea. I didn't care. I just started spouting. My husband was taken upstairs, and there I sat in the huge auditorium with my fingers, my thumb and my next finger around the neck of this little statue. And finally, when Dr. Oz came out to call my name, it was hours. It was like 6-7 hours. I went over to him, and I knew my husband had passed. I just knew it. No one would take care of him. And he looked at me with a smile, and he said, Maureen, you can see him in about 20 minutes. And I said, Doctor, I don't understand. He said, Maureen, it was truly a miracle because when I opened his chest, the aneurysm was ready to go. That's why the operation took so long. I had to get rid of the aneurysm. This is all the truth. I was shaking. I was absolutely shaking. Now, my husband was a good man, but he was not, over the top religious. I ran everywhere, still do, with my rosary beads, and they're my weapon. But anyway, I went to see my husband, and when he woke up, he said, Padre Pio was here. Now, Benedict, I had done many masses with him, and he promised me, because he's on the board of trustees in Columbia Presbyterian, that he would, but he didn't know, but it would be all right. I said, Father, your prayers are enough. I'm thinking my husband saw Benedict. Of course, he's gray, and the Padre's brown. But, with all that medication, I didn't, I honestly, me of little faith, I didn't know. But what Dr. Oz did was the first. My husband's heart was dead. The back of it was dead. Dr. Oz rolled it up like a hot dog, Italian sausage, and he put the quad on the front. And I saw him 20 minutes later. When I told Dr. Oz, let the doctor, let your hands do it, he said, I welcome the company. This is a Muslim. I welcome the company. There's my story, Debbie. There's my New Jersey, bringing everybody in between Father Groeschel and Padre Pio, who I absolutely loved and have a statue on my dresser. I don't know. You decide. I leave the mystery to you. I don't know.
Well, Maureen, I just want to tell you, we're both sitting here, and because we can see each other on Skype, and we're both just saying, wow. And I mean, tears started rolling down my face because I was just thinking that is incredible for so many reasons. And you are referring to, just for our listeners' sake, you're referring to the Dr. Oz, the TV show host, the famous Dr. Oz. And I just think that must have stuck with him, Maureen, that he tends to be a very open person. I've watched his show many times because I like some of his medical things that he imparts to all of us. So, I mean, just think of how that has planted seeds in him and his own faith and spirituality. I just think how beautiful it is that Padre Pio, for this personal great gift to you and your husband, and for Dr. Oz, and for all the medical staff that was in that operating room, just to be able to show the greatness of the belief in Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and how wonderful that is. And I just say to you that what a gift you received, Maureen. And I feel so grateful to you that you shared it with the entire world. Remember, this is a global audience, folks. These are real life stories that happen to people, just like your neighbors down the street, real life people. And this is amazing how the saints are at work on our behalf. Thank you, Maureen. God bless you. Beautiful story. What do you think, Jerry? Isn't it amazing?
It is just eye-popping and jaw-dropping to listen to some of this stuff, and yet on the other hand, it's not, because we hear it's almost become commonplace to hear some of these beautiful, beautiful stories. And Maureen, I echo what Debbie said. I'm so glad that you shared that, and it just brings so many different elements together here. She mentioned that Dr. Oz was, I think she said, a Muslim. Is that correct? And
that's correct.
Like you said, Debbie, Jesus wanted to reveal his glory through that particular situation there, and so. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Nice to hear from you, Maureen. We appreciate that. So many people have been to San Giovanni Rotondo and to Padre Pio's, where he lived and ministered and died and so forth. And I know many of you long to be there, and you just wish that you could. Circumstances, finances, whatever might not permit you to do that. But I'll tell you what, there is another shrine that you can go to, and it's called the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament. It's in Hanceville, Alabama. Mother Angelica has laid to rest there, along with many of her sisters. Her mother is there, is buried there as well. And you can make a trip there. Get in touch with EWTN. Go to EWTN.com and look up pilgrimages, and then they can give you all the details and, set you up with some tours. And they got the great gift shop there and the beautiful, gorgeous church and confessions and so much more. So if you can't get to the more exotic places that you'd like to go, this is certainly exotic and beautiful enough, and it is glorious there. So go to EWTN.com and look up pilgrimages and maybe make your next retreat or pilgrimage to be at EWTN and at Hanceville.
Speaking of EWTN television does a great job too at making sure that we understand Padre Pio. There's the documentary of Padre Pio that has been shown on there, and Gigi sent me yesterday. I wasn't able to tune in the celebration mass that was going on, and it was broadcasted on EWTN television. So that's the beauty of it, folks. I suggest either have EWTN television on all the time or the radio on all the time, because you're going to hear something that's going to help you move forward in your faith. Who's up next is Bernadette in Arlington, Virginia on Guadalupe Radio Network. Hi, Bernadette. Welcome.
Yes, hi. I've been waiting. Thank you for welcoming my call, and nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience, Bernadette. Go ahead.
Well, my story is, I have a letter that was written to me back in the 1990s. And my mother was part of an adoration group in the San Diego Archdiocese. So in this letter, my mother wrote to me that the relics of Padre Pio were touring the Archdiocese in San Diego back in the 1990s. And one of the relics came to the house by accident. It was a plastic bag with these feathers. And so at the time, I was overseas working in the Philippines with the American U.S. government, and I sent my mother a pineapple woven jewelry case. It was cloth. And so my mother writes in this letter, I saved the letter, and she says that she used that jewelry case and encased the feathers from that plastic bag into that jewelry pineapple woven material, and made a pillow and sent it off back to the adoration group. She was part of this adoration group in the Archdiocese. And so she writes this story on this letter. And she did pass away last year. God bless my mother. She was 81. So now that I've been listening to everyone and all the other stories of Padre Pio, she was able to go to the shrine before she passed some years ago. But I didn't know that Padre Pio was 81 when he passed. So, is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Maybe not. But she was devoted to Padre Pio. And when I read this letter now, and that pillow is roaming around somewhere, I guess with the other relics that tour the world, or maybe the United States, I have no idea. But if you see pineapple woven material as one of his pillows, well, that's what came out of what my mother's journey was in San Diego with the Archdiocese, with that group, that adoration group.
Wow.
So that's what I wanted to share.
So, Bernadette, this was a pillow. Was this pillow owned by Padre Pio, or the feather? Where did the feathers?
The feathers came along with the relics, and they were in a plastic bag, and they were just floating around, as part of this set of relics. And so my mother had blessed a series of little cloths, and I have that cloth on my bed. So you can lay the cloth, whatever you want blessed by these relics, you lay them for several hours when they're on tour at your archdiocese. And so for I don't know how many hours, so that cloth that I have here in my apartment is resting on my bed. And my mother would tell me, this has been blessed by the relics of Padre Pio that were in San Diego. So whenever you feel sick or ill or can't go to sleep or something, you feel sad, you put this on you. So I have it on my bed. And now that my mother has been passed for a year now, initially when I came back here after all the funeral and everything of my mother's passing, I was very sad. And I used that cloth to comfort me. And I do keep that cloth on my, but the cloth that I'm talking about that pillow, it were just his feathers. I don't know if those feathers belong to some sort of pillow. I have no idea. My mother has no idea. In this letter, I have no idea where those feathers came from. But she says, feathers belong in a pillow. So she says, I'm going to use that jewelry cloth that you gave me, Bernadette, and we made a pillow and gave it back to the Archdiocese to take with the rest of Padre Pio's relics.
Wow, Bernadette, that's absolutely beautiful. And would you mind imparting your mother's first name to us? If you listen to the show, you know that Debbie jots down names in our prayer book. Yeah, so.
Her name is Dolores, Dolores, and my middle name is Dolores. And I have a younger sister. Her first name is Dolores. That was my mother's name, Dolores.
Beautiful.
So I have since know the refrain. Over the summer, I went back to San Diego to visit family, and I joined a rosary group at a local church, and I learned the refrain of that Padre Pio song, where my past is to your mercy, my present is to your love, and my future is to God's providence. I learned that, and that was only, some weeks ago, and I memorized that because I sing in my choir.
Yeah. It's a beautiful composition of Padre Pio. Again, my past to your mercy, my present to your love, my future to your providence. And, of course, the other very famous prayer, Debbie, that we all know, pray, hope, and don't worry, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that's one of your favorites.
Because worry is useless. That's what he used to say. Bernadette, thank you so much. What an amazing story. Another gift to you and your family. How beautiful is that? We've got to get to Kim. Okay, Kim, we're down to just less than 2 minutes. Kim in Coleman, Alabama, on the EWTN app. You have a story about Padre Pio. Take it away, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I just had to call because 6 years ago today, Padre Pio interceded for my daughter in a very profound way. We were on vacation at the Gulf Shores, and we had been at the beach for about an hour, and when we got in the car, my daughter at the time was 10, and she looked kind of solemn and sad, and I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Well, Mommy, I said, "Are you sad because we have to go back to the room so soon?" And she said, "No, it's just that when I was running on the beach, I was short of breath, and I had a hard time, catching my breath." And at that moment, I had this strong maternal instinct come over me that I needed to take her to the urgent care. And really where Padre Pio interceded so profoundly was through this one urgent care doctor at the Gulf Shores. When he saw my daughter, first when I was in the waiting room for her to be seen, I pulled up my app that had the saint of the day on it. I didn't know it was Padre Pio's feast day. And when I saw that, I immediately started praying, "Padre Pio, please intercede on behalf of Maddie and just get her the proper medical care and the right doctors to help her with whatever's going on."
We got about 30 seconds here, Kim. Sorry, about 30 more seconds.
Okay.
Sorry.
I had a feeling it was really serious, and he sent us to another hospital, and the hospital said she had walking pneumonia and discharged her with medicine. Well, that night, during the night, that urgent care doctor kept calling the Foley Hospital saying, "I think she needs to be seen. I think it's more serious." And they were not listening to him. And then the next morning, another doctor called from that same hospital and said, "Everybody's seen your daughter, and we're under the same impression that it's just walking pneumonia." But she said, "I think she really needs to be seen." So she said, "I'm under the same opinion as this urgent care doctor." So
real quick, Kim.
We went to Sacred Heart Hospital in Pensacola, and 2 hours later, my daughter had been in emergency pulmonary surgery, and they removed a chip that she had asphyxiated two or 3 weeks prior to our trip.
Oh my!
And when I called the urgent care doctor, I found out that I called to witness to him about Padre Pio, and he shared with me that he was Catholic and he knew about Padre Pio.
Kim, that's all the time we have. I apologize. We're so grateful for that miracle. Thank you for sharing that with us. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie continues tomorrow. Have a beautiful and blessed day.
Dr. Ray Guarendi, making a commitment to the wives. When the show's on, put the radio under your husband's pillow. The percentage of yes dears will rise. The doctor is in next.
We need EWTN Radio for the reason that Mother Angelica founded this entire enterprise. She always saw this as a spiritual growth network. It was to be an enterprise in media that reached people in all aspects of their life. She saw this as a holistic approach to reaching the whole person in the middle of the world and bringing them truth and life.
Raymond Arroyo thinks Catholic radio is important. So should you. EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Father John Riccardo.
The ultimate answer to the question of where I meet Jesus. Because obviously, in imperfect ways, I meet him almost anywhere. I meet him in creation, whether it's the majesty of a sunrise or a sunset. You sense and you see something of the person of God, his majesty, his power, his awe. I can have access to him in ways, in many places and fashions. The fullest place we meet Jesus, the place where you and I on earth most have access to the Father, where we accomplish God's will on earth, are those minutes on Sunday, which so many of us find tedious and somehow see as an obligation. So please God, by the power of his Holy Spirit, he will give us the grace to understand more profoundly what it is that really happens when you and I come to church.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.